Our next speaker and final speaker for the day is Corey King with Zenfri?
Zenfri, but that's a constant problem.
Yeah, no worries. Will be sharing with us about what Zenfri is, or Zenfri.
Well, it's actually my wife and my internet handle smashed together is what Zenfri is. We met online, and my handle was Zenith, hers was Friday. Stick them together.
Zenfri, all right. Very, very nice. I hope she's watching.
This goes on the internet, so I'll make her watch it.
Excellent.
All right. All right. So my company's called Zenfri. We're a creative arts and entertainment company, which means that we don't just do AR. We create movies, books. We've had gallery shows. Our focus is actually on narrative. And as opposed to sticking ourselves to a specific medium or form, we go where the story takes us. We come up with a story concept, and even if we have no idea even what AR was when we got started, we go down this path to make the story happen. And with the case of Clandestine Anomaly, which is our current and largest project, and the AR project, the whole concept was to find a way to tell a story where the canvas is the world. Being from film, you have a lot of friends who gloat about how film has the largest canvas, and well, we're going to change that, and we are changing that, because the world is the largest canvas until we get to a bigger planet, but that's a long way away. That was our goal. Our goal was to create a narrative, to take narrative and design and merge them together to create a really meaningful experience. As we all know that there are the current problems with AR that have been mentioned here, like the technology is in its infancy. Old mechanics need not apply. There's a lot of sense of like, let's just do the same thing we always did, but put it in AR. So let's have a board game where, as opposed to interacting with the board directly, we interact through a screen, and it's really kind of clunky, in my opinion. Real-world problems meet gaming in our situation, so things like not getting, going into a bad area of town. If the AR game, Google Ingress, sends you into a bad end of the neighborhood, that's probably not good. Even though you're playing in the real world, there's probably places in the real world where you shouldn't be playing, especially not with a $800 device. Mainstream interest. There really isn't mainstream interest, and in fact, mainstream people have no idea what you're talking about until you put it in their hands, which is a huge problem. And AR is a technology, not a genre. What that means is it has a lot of applicable applications, but when it comes to gaming or comes to storytelling, you say, it's an AR game. What does that mean? What is this? Is this a sci-fi story? Is this a shooter? I have no idea. It has no point of reference. So the new technology, anytime a medium is introduced, whether it be film or anything else, there's a learning period where it's deployed in a lot of the ways that we're seeing here at the conference for industrial reasons or advertising or gimmicks. See it as film used to be shown at circuses or whatever, and sort of shown up and wow, that's amazing, and it hits you like a candy, and then it's done, and then it's over with. And that's where we are today. At this stage, it's curious to us. We all are up to speed on what the possibilities are, but most people don't really see it. And my opinion is actually the way to get it into the hands of the mainstream, my narrative bias coming into play here, is to tell a story. It happened with film, it happens with comics, it happens with pretty much any communication radio, including radio, television. It works for technical purposes, it works for research purposes, but nobody in the mainstream, or generally people don't care until there's some kind of story to go with it. And for example, with film, it used to just be that they would just shoot one thing and keep the camera still. It took somebody who decided what to do with film, creating editing, sound, camera moves, coming up with conventions that were unique to the medium, and also taking things that already existed, such as acting. And if you ever film a theater actor, you'll see why that's not the same as film acting, or lighting, and making it so that, okay, these things will work in this new medium, but they need to change and grow. So that really needs story, and given this trend across all these different mediums which, to go mainstream, to really create an emotional relationship with people, require narrative, For us, this was the obvious choice, and obviously where AR needs to go. It's not the only application for AR, but it is an application that we think needs to happen if we want the general public to care. It needs stories, and we've put a lot of effort into trying to figure out how to do that. However, the thing is, we're saying we're going to create this story out of AR, but there are no examples, unfortunately, that are any good, in our opinion. They've either been gimmicky or there wasn't really a story. There's as much a story as go save Mario or go save Peach, and that's about the end of the narrative. That's not a real rich narrative. There's not an emotional connection. Similarly, what are the game conventions? What are the new, how are we going to take mechanics that exist and make them for AR as opposed to just forcing them into a medium that they don't belong? So this is the core principles we came up with to try to accomplish this with our game. Reality must impact the story and the mechanics. There's no point in calling it augmented reality if it doesn't care at all about reality. That's why it's a gimmick. It has to care about the world. For us, because it has to care about the world, it also means that the player is the person. This doesn't have to happen this way, but it's a little bit like an alternate reality game in our conception. You are the one in reality playing the game, so you're the star, you're the player, you're the character. It needs to be playable anywhere. There have been some games that have deployed AR, geolocative AR, which is what we're doing, in specific cities, but it really has to be somewhere you can play it in Alaska, you can play it in the desert. The game needs to be smart enough to understand where you are and customize to that situation. Similarly, if you're forced to play outside, that's a huge disincentive on a Sunday morning when you're enjoying a lovely evening with your wife, but you just want to play a game a little bit on the side, but it tells you to go 3 blocks. A pretty big disincentive, so we think that the goal should be that as opposed to force people to go outside or force people to experience the augmented reality aspects, you incentivize it, you make it something that adds value. The next principle isn't something I think needs to apply to AR. I think that there's a lot of ways to tell small, intimate stories with AR, but for us, trying to be one of the first to tell the story where the canvas is the world, we figured we're going to go big and go home and go for an epic story, hopefully on the scale something like Star Wars. And for us, technology isn't limited. We're still trying to get higher resolution video. We're still trying to push more polygons on our Xboxes. You're never going to be happy with what you have, so you have to design around that. And for us, narrative is a great way to overcome a lot of these problems. The pillars of the game that we decided to build. Obviously, there's GPS-based augmented reality. Similar to the robot, the use of GPS that we use doesn't have the occlusion problems either. If you put your hand in front of the camera, the game still understands where you are. And if you lose your GPS signal, it actually still can triangulate and figure out where everything's supposed to be placed for a limited period of time, but a good amount of time. RPG. So we're using these terms like RPG. I want to make it very clear, and RPG purists will pretty much don't like that I use the word RPG. But the thing is, none of these things, RPG, it's not really an RPG game. It is a tower defense game, but the thing is we don't have the words applicable for our medium. We don't have the pan, cut, tilt. So for now we have to use it's close to these things that exist because we're changing what it really means for our medium. So RPG story progression, tower defense combat, and then parts and unit collection is something that we did in the game. So the impact of reality, I kind of mentioned this a little bit. Most games either are tabletop like a board game, or otherwise ignore reality, or there's safety risks involved. Now, we knew this going in. We didn't wait to have the user test to be like, oh man, that guy just walked into a bad area. We kind of conceived of that from a start. Or having a game where it sort of obligates you to cross a highway where there's no sidewalk, that's also a bad idea. As soon as you're bringing reality into the game, there's a whole host of new problems which we are trying to solve. So for us, GPS is customized to each person's location. The user will actually feed the information to the game. The best example of this is how the game starts, which is an alien ship is crashing down. It's hurtling towards the Earth. You're playing another game that's actually called Clandestine Anomaly that's hacked. And when it's hacked, it says, oh my god, we need a crash site. Things are so bad they actually just had to hit any random guy's phone because we don't know who the player is. We don't know your background. We don't know that Darth Vader's your father or anything about you. So you have to make the narrative make sense for anybody. And it says, find us a park or an open field. The game prompts you for that. It will learn that location. Where are your hospitals? It'll learn the location. What's an area that matters to you? Where's something important? And it will use those reference points on a real-world map to continue to grow the game board and make it more customized to your location. And then, of course, there's other features like, don't make the game go here. Or for your parents who want their kids to play, keep them within, a shout range. That's not an actual button, but they could do that. Companion characters. So for us, a companion character, story is important. That's what drives everything. If it doesn't make sense to the story, then it's just a mechanic that is there. Well, it shouldn't be there if you're trying to tell a story. And so we came up with a companion character. The example of going across the highway. We're still working on face tracking, but our conception is to have a character float over your shoulder that you get early in the game, and they help you through the game, but they also do things for you, like go across the highway for me, or go and do totally remote missions that you wouldn't be able to do because it's in China, but it's a way to create a relationship between you and the character. A sci-fi universe is pretty convenient for AR. It helps us explain why everything floats, or why you can't see them until you hold up the tablet. We do think that these types of things, these kind of narrative conceits, will go away once we have sort of full vision goggles and stuff. But for now, we need to stick with those kind of mediums to make it realistic. It's weird. You go sci-fi to make it realistic. It's just about coming up with narrative justification. So yeah, why can't things... In our game, you can't see a human character in augmented reality. That doesn't make any sense. If you're saying it's really real, then they would be a person. So we actually will be casting actors in our game, and you'll be getting communication with them through phone and video and things like that, which I talked about in the next slide. That's called using emergent concepts. Emergent concepts is emerging real reality with the game, and make the mechanics feel plausible. So emergent reality. Your phone is a phone in this game. There's been a lot of AR games where you sit there and it becomes a giant machine gun that's shooting down planes. And to me, that really breaks the whole sense of reality. You're telling me that you're augmenting reality and that somehow my iPhone and iPad in my house is like a giant Gatling gun. I prefer to think that your iPhone is an iPhone that has just been instilled with special properties due to, in our case, alien technology. So you still get phone calls from characters. You still get phone calls. You still get texts. It acts and behaves like a phone in the game. Players communicate with characters, by phone and text. Player agency. This is super important. If the game is to be compelling and you're really a player in the game, you got to have actually something that you do that changes the story. So it's your story, it's your phone, it's your journey, your choices. This is why we went partly why we went RPG, affect the game. So you yourself impact how the story plays out. A player can be creative about their strategy. There's a lot of unit customization. We sort of were inspired a little bit by Minecraft. It's not nearly that amount of customization, but there's a lot of things that you can collect and change so that you put things into the augmented world that you have selected the parts for, so you feel like you're contributing and changing the world. It's not this one-way communication of, here's an augmented thing, press a button. You're actually putting things out and manipulating them. Playing indoors. Now, we think that you need to be able to play anywhere, including indoors, but it affects the game, it affects the mechanics. There'll be things you can't do indoors that you could have done outdoors, and also it affects the story. If you send your probe, or you send another character in the game to do your dirty work, if they don't like you, they might lie to you. Or they might not have the proper information. They might give you false information accidentally. The only way to be sure about what's really happening in the game is to go there and go there yourself. So along with mechanical changes, we make sure that it also impacts the story. Just like in real life, if you trust your friend to tell you how the party was, they might tell you they had a little bit more fun than they actually did. Custom unit building. This is another element. This is these things in AR appear to be about 3 stories tall. Each of those parts is bigger than a person. And you essentially create a whole armada of them by collecting a wide variety of parts. It's a little bit Pokemon-esque. It's a little bit RPG as well, because you level up and upgrade. But the whole thing that was important for us is that the player needs to feel like they affect the world. And the way to do that is to give them options and customizations. And then it's also how they express the strategy in the game, because different parts have different functions, and that's how you can sort of specialize. Tower defense. Tower defense is actually a natural fit for iPads. They're great, and we chose it partly for that reason, partly because if you want to have a feeling that it's local, but also like it can play out on the world stage, and you eventually have to protect the whole world, placing towers and units is a compelling way to do it. And we also, the reason tower defense is also important is, again, until we get the goggles on, no one knows what we're doing. A lot of AR games, especially ones that want you to play outside, make you look like an idiot. I mean, we can be honest about that. If I'm sitting here, and it's also dangerous, like, boom, there's a post that you didn't see because you're paying attention to the AR objects. We actually make it so that most of the game, along with fitting with the story, it's a covert adventure. You're not going to be like, I'm a spy. You're going to be down on your iPad. You're going to be manipulating things, making strategic and story decisions down here, and then taking snapshots in AR. And when you do go to AR, it's meaningful. It's not just, hey, look at the theater. Wow, there's things that you can do there that you couldn't do anywhere else or couldn't do any other way. We actually think that the examples for why this is important, not to overuse AR, is in the use of 3D or any other new technology. The terrible 3D movies are the ones that are like, wow, 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 3D, wow, and you sort of get, it doesn't immerse you in the story. You get lost in the, I'm being bombarded with images.